Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachani Nirvishesha Sanyavari Paskyacha Desatani Panchakopa Tirubhishcha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Daivashakti Mataji. Her and I were from the same city, Philadelphia, in USA. When I first met the devotees, as she mentioned, her husband Nayana Brahm, he was temple president. She was also very much, as Prabhupada would say, temple president. Prabhupada once wrote a letter to Jamuna saying that the men, they manage externally, and the women, behind the scenes, they manage everything internally. We said that to her also, great devotee, Jamuna. So yes, it's due to her that I'm here. She's one of the first people who was preaching to me way back then, and now she's been in Vrindavan, as I mentioned yesterday, for 50 years. Prabhupada told her to distribute books. She only came here because they guaranteed to her that that's what she would do, talk about book distribution. Otherwise, she'll never leave Vrindavan. And because of what today is, I had an idea what to speak about, but I think I have to start somewhere else. How important Srila Prabhupada's books are. When I became his servant, way back then in 1972, I was always surprised to see every afternoon Srila Prabhupada reading his books. His books. If I would go in the room back and forth, he'd be sitting behind the desk with his reading glasses on, and be completely absorbed in his books. Initially, I found it a little surprising. He's reading his books. Right? They're his books. He's reading them. Once on an airplane, Prajumna and myself were next to Srila Prabhupada on the plane, and he's reading his books. He's reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. And we're just sitting beside him, chanting or something. And he looked at us, and he said, "What author reads his books once they're printed?" And of course, he would give the answers. He would ask the question and give the answers, and said, no one. Once they print a book, they go on to the next one. They have no interest. It's finished. He said, but I'm here reading this book. Why? He said, because these are not my words, Krishna's words. So as I said, his afternoon, Prabhupada, like today, very special day, appearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I know going through the years in our society, we always saw what his schedule was one of the things, very, very regulated, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he had his schedule there, and he told everyone what his schedule was. Prabhupada would refer to it as well. How he did his magistrate business, he had his time for chanting, had his time for writing, had his time for reading, 2-3 hours of sleep. But as what I was able to observe, Prabhupada was the same. Actually, very, very regulated. I mentioned that yesterday. Regulation, he was very regulated. Getting up around midnight every day, somewhere between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning, and that's when he would do his translating work. If it was possible other times, like in Hawaii, sometimes he would translate all day long because he was in this little island. There were thousands and thousands of disciples, just the people at the temple there. So he was free to translate. But in the morning, as he said himself, he took 2-3 hours of sleep. That's what he did. And then we followed his schedule through the day, of course. By 5 o'clock or so in the morning, he'd ring his bell. I'd go in and get things prepared, and then the morning walk. and then go back to the temple, greet the deities, Guru Puja class, breakfast. Then he'd meet with devotees at the temple there, help with management. During massage, as I mentioned yesterday, he would hear the mail every day, 20, 25 letters coming in. But after his lunch and a brief nap, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, that was his time, his bhajan. Sometimes reading his books. Sometimes he would just sit on the floor, play harmonium. I'd hear the harmonium. I'd run into the room. And I'd wait, and he'd just look and grab the cartels. That meant get the cartels. And I could play cartels while he chanted. And other times he would just be walking around his room that time of the day in the afternoon, 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, chanting rounds. So he had his time, personal time, when he did his bhajan. Then again in the evening was darshan time. And then little prasadam, sometimes a lot of prasadam, 9 o'clock at night or so. But the most amazing thing was seeing him reading his books. One day after I was with him, it was 6 months I had been with him, and it was afternoon time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he rings the bell. I go in the room right before his asana, offer obeisances, and he has his glasses on, and he's got his Bhagavad Gita. He's reading his Bhagavad Gita. And he stopped, he rang his bell, and he looked at me. He said, "This book is so nice. If you just read this one book, you can become Krishna conscious." He said, "Just this book, it's so nice." He said, "You don't have to read hundreds of books, just this one book." Then he put his head back into the book, continued reading. And I offered obeisances and went back to my room. He was just in so much ecstasy, reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. And he wanted to share it, and he wanted to encourage me, I'm sure, to read his books. So we're traveling around the world. I'm with him 5 times, went around the world with him. So that was in Los Angeles. So now many months go by, and it's the afternoon, one afternoon, and he rings his bell. I run into the room, offer obeisances. He's sitting behind his desk. He's reading Nectar of Devotion, his Nectar of Devotion. And he stops, and he just looks at me. "This book is so nice. If you just read this one book, you can become Krishna conscious." He said, exact same thing he said 6 months ago. You don't have to read hundreds of books. You don't have to read so many books. Everything, he said, is here in this one book. If you just read this book, understand, he said, you can become Krishna conscious. You don't have to read any other books. Then he put his head back down, so he was finished. Prabhupada didn't waste words. If he didn't need to say something, he didn't. Like Maharaj said the other day, and I said last night, first-class servant knows what to do. So just by a look, he can instruct you. Krishna Balaram Mandir at his home, he'd ring the bell, I'd come in the room, and he'd just go. It meant turn the fans on. This is being first-class servant. You already know what to do. Sometimes he would just look at the French doors. His French doors, men open the curtains or close the curtains depending on the time of day without saying anything. So when he spoke, you should listen, because whatever he's going to say is not casual. Even it seems casual. Everything he says, he's trying to get you, make a little advancement in Krishna consciousness. So the second time, he's reading a different book, but he says the same thing. Everything he said is here in this book. You just read this book, you can be Krishna conscious. Then he put his head down, which meant he was finished. And I offered obeisances. I went back to my room. Another year went by. He was in Juhu. in the afternoon. Afternoon was his time. Imagine, he's running an entire society, 100 temples, thousands of devotees, but he understands and he wants to relish these books, Krishna. And he was a devotee. What we were able to see, Daiva Shakti and I and many other fortunate devotees, Prabhupada, as soon as he left the temple room, went into his room, he was a devotee of Krishna. Just humble devotee of Krishna. And he enjoyed everything that he was teaching us. He was doing himself, and he relished. So now, 2 years later, after I join him, rings the bell. I go in the room and offer obeisances. Do you have a book? Any book. As Prabhupada would say, any book. I need a book. Anyone have a book? I'm asking. Does anyone have a book? I need a book. No one here has a Bhagavad Gita with them?
Not only book, we have sets.
Open book. This is good.
We have a lot of sets.
Okay. So the third time, and we know the number 3 is also a very important number. So many things with Srila Prabhupada 3 times. It would happen 3 times and finished. So I come in, I offer obeisances, I sit up. Prabhupada has his glasses, reading glasses on. He's reading Krishna book. My very first service, personal service I had with Srila Prabhupada was reading Krishna book. Every afternoon for a week in the garden, I read Krishna. I was the designated Krishna book reader. So now I come in, I offer obeisances, and he looks at me. What does he say? This book is wonderful. This book is so nice. He said, if you just read this one book, you can be Krishna conscious. He said, you don't have to read any other books. He knew what I was not doing. He kept telling me, he kept trying, just read one book, do something, read a book. So he said the same thing, just read this one book. You don't have to read hundreds of books. He said, this book is so nice. He said, if you read this book, understand you can become Krishna conscious. But he didn't put his head back down. He just staring at me. Means I can't leave. Until his head goes back down, I know. Just sit there. Faithful dog. You just sit and wait. What do you want? Then he looks at me and I'm sure he's thinking, he said, you don't even have to read the whole book. One chapter, he's pointing in his Krishna book. You read one chapter in this book, you can be Krishna conscious. One chapter. And I never say a word. Good or bad, I wouldn't say anything. I would just sit and listening. And he's looking at me. You don't even have to read the whole chapter. He said 1 page. You read 1 page in this book, you can be Krishna conscious. And he's still looking at me. You don't even have to read the whole page. If you read 1 line in this book, you can become Krishna conscious. We're not finished. We're not done yet. And he's looking at me. You don't even have to read the whole line. He said, if you read 1 word in this book, you can be Krishna conscious. And he went, yeah, and he pointed. I don't know what page, what sentence, what word, what chapter. And then he pointed, because Krishna is in every word. See? This is Srila Prabhupada's books. This is why those that know, just like Mataji, Daiva Shakti Mataji, Prabhupada said, distribute my books. Her whole life, she's been distributing Prabhupada's books. Those of you that come to Vrindavan, she has her matchless gift shop there, international bookstore in the front. She has so many book tables going on, just doing what Srila Prabhupada wanted. And as she says, we're all here. Even you think, well, I didn't come because of a book, I came because of this person. Everybody's here because of Srila Prabhupada's books. And as she said, just like, well, in our December marathon, where do you find these books? They're on the altar, along with the deities. Prabhupada said, if you just touch, you just hand the person the book, they benefit, right? It's Krishna. Krishna is there in every word. So this is what I saw with Srila Prabhupada. He encouraged us, distribute my books, help expand the mission, Krishna consciousness. But reading, he said, also you have to read. He said, otherwise you're out distributing and somebody says, well, what's this one about? And you say, well, I haven't read that yet. And on Sankirtan, of course, as the years were going by, in 1973, even 72, we had Krishna book, distributing Krishna books. The first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we're distributing that. But then by 1975, 1976, or second, third, fourth, fifth canto, sixth canto, and some of the devotees, they were concerned because as the books would get printed, hundreds of thousands, that's what you distributed. So it might be it was the fifth canto, all about the hellish planets, all about not going to the moon. And devotees said, Prabhupada, is it okay to distribute this book? Any book. I heard that phrase so many times. Any book you distribute. They're so amazing. Once we were in Australia. We would travel. When you traveled, it was very difficult working with the schedule, constantly traveling. At least for us 20-year-olds it was. Prabhupada, he was transcendental. Wherever he went, everything just resumed, right? The schedule he had. Always followed that schedule. So when we traveled to Australia, it's 14 hours to go anywhere. From India to Sydney, 14 hours. So it might be 20 hours, a few different airports. So then we got to Perth, Australia. And it was just myself, Paramahamsa, and two young Australian brahmacharis. Very young, very new brahmacharis. And they were very excited. They got to be there to help. So Australia is famous for milk products. If you ever followed Kurma's, see Kurma's books, and Kurma, sour cream, so much sour cream, clotted cream in Australia like England, so many milk products. So we got there, and that day, we had nice breakfast, which I was making. We had ghee, we had cream, we had sour cream, we had cheeses. So this was rare for us when you travel with Prabhupada. So we were eating very nicely. I had a nice big lunch, myself, Paramahamsa, a few young brahmacharis. Prabhupada's in his sitting room. It was a cottage, like a vacation cottage. So it had like 3 little bedrooms, a kitchen, one bathroom. So after prasadam, myself and my godbrothers, Prabhupada took a nap. We took our nap. Of course, Prabhupada, 15, 20 minutes, Prabhupada's up, and all of us, we say, conked out. We were out. We were out, sleeping very, very nicely. And eventually I heard a bell ringing. Prabhupada just had a handbell. So where I was literally had to be within earshot. You had to be able to hear the bell ring. So we're always very close, sometimes just outside his sitting room. But we had our own little bedroom. The 4 of us were staying in. So finally I hear a bell ringing, and I was literally dreaming. And as soon as I heard the bell, I knew I'm in trouble. Just by the sound of the bell, I'm in trouble. I knew I'm sleeping. I go in and I'm offering obeisances. And as would often happen, if he's going to chastise you, he didn't have to look at you. It's while you're down on the ground, he's already yelling at you. I've been ringing this bell for hours. It could have been a few, but hours. Sometimes he could say for years. He was on a different level, pure devotee. His time frame was like Lord Brahma, 2 minutes was like 10 years. I've been ringing this bell for hours. Where have you been? Why haven't you answered? Sleeping like dead men. Everyone sleeping like dead men. He said, the karmis, Prabhupada would call them karmis. The karmis, he said, they're all out working very, very hard for their family, for their sex life, not the devotees, sleeping very comfortably. Call them. Oh, now he wants to tell everyone, call them. So I offered obeisances, I left the room, and usually when this was going on, you would feel a little bit of happiness seeing your godbrothers getting chastised by Prabhupada. I have to admit it. When he said call them, you become happy because you knew he's going to chastise them, not you. As long as you're not getting chastised, you're happy. So I went into the room and they're all sleeping soundly. First I woke up Paramahamsa, Prabhupada's secretary. But I wasn't feeling happy. And I said, Prabhupada wants to see you. He's really mad. That was one of our mantras. Prabhupada wants to see you and he's really mad. And then I went to the brahmacharis next there, the young boys. I said, Prabhupada wants to see you. And they're all smiling. They're thinking, oh. I couldn't even tell them what was in store for them. So the three of us, we go back into Prabhupada's room, offer obeisances, and sit up. He says it all again. He was expert. He could say the very same paragraph, not miss one word. Everyone's sleeping like dead men. He was, karmis are working so hard. Huh? He would say that for their sex life, working hard for their sex life. Not the devotees, all very happily, comfortably sleeping. And then he looked at all of us. He said, go ahead, go back to the room and sleep. So we all got up, offered obeisances, and we went back in the room, and everybody's their hand in their bead. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And there's no question of sleeping anymore. So after 2 minutes, I hear the bell ring again. And now everyone's like, oh no. And I'm like, oh no. I go back into the room, offer obeisances. He said, call everyone. So I went back in. I said, Prabhupada wants to see you. The devotees are not so excited this time. They go, what else is he going to do? So we all go back into the room together. This was my daily life. This is what life was like for over 2 years. I long for that life. We all go back and offer obeisances. Prabhupada looks at us. He says, okay, we'll have class. This was how he would fix things. Never has to apologize, your guru, there's no question, but he would let you know. He cares about you. All he's trying to do is see that you become Krishna conscious. So he says, we'll have class. And he looks at the one brahmachari. Right behind him is a bookshelf. This is 1975. So that now there's 20, 30 of Prabhupada's books on his bookshelf. Every temple he went to, his quarters, there was a bookshelf. The only books in the bookshelf were always Prabhupada's books. No other books, no encyclopedias, dictionaries, other Sanskrit books, nothing, magazines, Prabhupada's books. So he said to the devotee, get a book. He said, and read. Of course, what did the devotee say? Which book, Srila Prabhupada? Any book. So the devotee gets the book. And he's looking at Prabhupada. Where should I read? Anywhere. Anywhere. So then the devotee started reading, and Prabhupada made us understand. He loved all of us. So many instructions he gave me. I know trying to help me in my course in Krishna consciousness. He was so expert. He could preach to you. He could chastise you without you even knowing that's what he was doing. You just thought he was talking to you. At least I did. I was rather dense. So he would say things to me, and I didn't understand. He was telling me what to do. Told you, in Los Angeles, I was brahmachari. I was with him for a year. I didn't know what was in my future, but he did. He could see. He could see by how things were going. I bring him his lunch, put it on the table. I'm offering obeisances. He said, being a brahmachari is an austerity. Being a grahasta is an austerity. He said, you just have to decide which austerity you want. And then he started eating. So again, he's done. Offer obeisances, go back. Now I have to roll chapatis, bring them in one at a time. So 24 hours later, I put his plate on the table. I'm offering obeisances. He says, it was more difficult managing my family than it is managing ISKCON. 2 sentences, he said. 2 minutes. 1 minute one day, 1 minute the next day. And again, it would right over my head, but he was telling me the importance. Sleeping, Maya, big Maya. He was always ringing the bell, sometimes in the morning before the walk. Not all of his entourage would rise for Mangal Arti sometimes. And he knew. When we arrived in Vrindavan in 1972 for Kartik, it was myself, Pradyumna, Shyamasundar, the 3 of us. We were together for over a year. Wonderful. Both of them, amazing devotees. But they were sleeping. It's like 6 in the morning in Vrindavan, Radha Damodar Temple. And I'm new. I'm with them now for literally 3 weeks. He rings the bell. I go in the room. He said, where are the others? I said, no, Prabhupada, they're taking rest. Call them. So I went in, tapped Shyamasundar. Prabhupada wants to see you. So, of course, we all go in together, offer obeisances. And Prabhupada said, why are you sleeping? He said, you should be up. He said, you should be up early in the morning. He said, once you bathe early in the morning, by 4 o'clock in the morning, cold bath. He said, it's not an austerity. He said, it's common sense. Common sense. It's Ayurvedic principle. Common sense, he said. He said, and if you rise early in the morning, attend Mangal Artik, chant your rounds. He said, after 12 years, everything you say will be perfect. That's the potency of Srila Prabhupada, the potency of the Mahamantra. It was 1975. Prabhupada went around the world 2 months. He went around the world in 2 months. He visited 12 temples in those 2 months. Started in Mumbai, through Japan, Los Angeles, Mexico City, Caracas, and then the U.S. Every temple he went to, now imagine, this is 10 years after he arrived in America. And as he goes to each place, this is what he sees. Hundreds of people chanting Hare Krishna. And every arrival he would speak. And every one of those arrivals in Los Angeles, in Mexico City, in Caracas, Miami, especially in Atlanta, he would have tears in his eyes, talking Lord Chaitanya. In Caracas, he said, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they've traveled so far to be with you, he said. Of course, he was traveling so much to be with us, to bring everyone to Krishna consciousness. And then he went to then he went to London, Bhaktivedanta Manor. And so 4 or 5 times he's on the Vyasa speaking, and he'd just stop. And he'd go into ecstasy. He's seeing, he could see. He did it. He did it. He always had faith it would happen. But now he's seeing the result. Temples all over the world, people all over the world chanting Hare Krishna. He was in ecstasy. And then when he arrives in Mayapur, he gives his address again. And again, as he's speaking, tears filled his eyes, and he just stopped, closed his eyes. And after, sometimes it could seem like forever. It was usually just a minute or two, but it was a very long minute. Behind him, there was a sannyasi, and everybody's quiet, just like here. You couldn't hear a sound. And the devotee behind him starts chanting, Namo Vishnu Padaya. Prabhupada's eyes open. And then the kirtan went on. So then after the kirtan was over, Prabhupada's walking up the stairs back to his room, and Brahmananda and myself are behind him and other devotees, and there's a big argument going on. Why did he start chanting? Prabhupada was eyes closed, he was in ecstasy. Why did he chant? He shouldn't be chanting, he should just wait for Prabhupada to open his eyes. And others were saying, no, chant Hare Krishna, that's what we do, we always chant Hare Krishna. So this discussion's going on. And Prabhupada gets into his room. Brahmananda and myself, we go in the room with him. Prabhupada sits behind his desk. And Brahmananda says, Srila Prabhupada, this morning on the Vyasa, you went into ecstasy. He said, when that happens, he said, what should we do? And Prabhupada looked at him like, why are you even asking? He said, I don't do that very often. He said very humbly, I don't do that very often. Prabhupada controlled his emotions all the time. But sometimes it would leak out. And Brahmananda continued, yes, but when it happens, when you do it, what should we do? And Prabhupada just looked, he said, just chant Hare Krishna. Like, you can go now, just chant Hare Krishna. Then when he went into that building, the Lotus building, so now it was almost done, like 90% done. And Prabhupada stayed there. So after that, we all went up into the room, and Jaipataka Maharaj was there, and Bhavananda, Atreya Rishi from Iran, Atreya Rishi, one of the GBCs at that time. And Prabhupada was very happy to see the Lotus building. And Jaipataka Maharaj, he would always glorify Srila Prabhupada. Whenever he entered the room, he would chant different slokas and things, and it was very sweet. So then Prabhupada was looking, he said, very, very nice, he said. And Bhavananda said, it's all by you, Srila Prabhupada, it's all by your mercy. Prabhupada said, no, he said, I had an idea. He said, but Krishna has done. And then he said, it's all the mercy of my spiritual master. He said, it's all the mercy of Prabhupada and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He said, it's by their mercy. And then he said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he predicted that in the future there would be devotees from so many languages, so many countries chanting here in Mayapur Dham. He said he made that prediction. And then Prabhupada said, then he continued, he said that someone would come to distribute Krishna consciousness all over the world. He said that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prediction. He said, that person I may be. And that's all he said. Just like he would never, just like he said to me, I mentioned last night, perhaps my father knew. But then he would never go any further. He didn't want to hear his glories, Srila Prabhupada. So he said the same thing. That person I may be. Right after he said that, he looked at Jayapataka. So you're planting these bananas? He went from one extreme to simply planting bananas, and it was a special kind of banana. So when he said it, Jayapataka said, yes, we're planting bananas are there. He said, so this banana is there? He said, well, no, not right now, Srila Prabhupada. That banana is not there. And then Prabhupada said, so with the cows, I don't know if any of you see nowadays, there's this whole big thing that, only the Sarabi cows, a real cow, A2 milk, and there's A1 milk coming from the Western country. They have all these different things that they say. And Prabhupada looked at Jayapataka. He said, if you bring one Jersey cow from the West and you made it with the Sarabi cow here in India, he said, it'll be very good. He said, because the cows in India, they can tolerate a lot of heat, but the milk is not very rich, not very creamy. He said, but the Jersey cow is very creamy milk. Prabhupada knew, because New Vrindavan, we used to give him milk. Kirtan and I would literally make it half and half. He would put the cream, this much milk and this much cream from the top of the milk, and that's what he would give to Prabhupada to drink at night. So Prabhupada understood. So he was saying, put the two together here in Mayapur. None of this nonsense, huh? Just like the nonsense. Us Westerners. Prabhupada went to the West. See, anyone. Krishna's for everyone. This is Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So he was like that everywhere. For everyone. So even with the cows, he was the same way. He was ready to actually bring cows from the West. I think we're already at after 8 o'clock. What's our schedule? Anyway, I think it's getting late, right? If there's any questions, do I have time for a question or two?
Sure.
Okay. We have time for a few questions. Anyone has a question? Seven Up story. Okay. That's 2 nights in a row. I guess I don't have a choice. I guess. All right. That'll be one question then. So this was in about July 1973. And Prabhupada's traveling from India to New York City. And a few hours after the flight, the stewardess is rolling the cart. And on the cart are just plastic cups filled with, some had water, some had 7-Up, and some had Coca-Cola. So she's going down with the cart. And of course, she stops in front of us. And Prabhupada, very observant, and he's looking, what is that? And she's offering drink. I said, well, Prabhupada is 7-Up. And he goes, okay. He says, okay to me. He doesn't talk to the stewardess. One thing I always noticed with Prabhupada when he traveled, everything went through the via media, his translator, the person that understood. So he didn't talk to the ladies in that way. So he would just tell me, yes, okay. So then, of course, I say 3 7-Ups, because whatever Prabhupada does, none of us, we never took anything from outside. No juices, no sodas, no breads. Everything was all Maya. But he have 7-Up. So I put the table down for Prabhupada. We all have our tables down, and there's this clear plastic cup with the 7-Up and a few ice cubes. And you can literally see the bubbles bursting and it going up. And so we're all just watching Prabhupada in amazement. He's about to drink a soda. And he grabs it. And when he grabs his, we do the same thing. You don't drink before but as soon as he drinks, it's Mahaprasadam, everything Mahaprasad. So he grabs and he, said, this is very good. He looks at me, this is very good. And we're just watching him. It's just in ecstasy. He keeps taking a sip and the bubbles are hitting his nose. And he said, very nice, very refreshing. It was like a 7-Up commercial he was doing on the plane. So we finished our cups of 7-Up. So then 3-4 hours later on the airplane, now they're, going down with the cart. Now they have the cans. The whole cans and everything. They're coming down and stops in front of us. Would you like something to drink? Prabhupada looks at me. 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, he said. So I said, we'll all have 7-Ups. So now we each have a can of 7-Up and we have the glass, empty glass, and I open the thing and pour it in. And Prabhupada grabs the can. He starts looking at it and he goes, carbonated water, sugar, lemon lime. He says, it's all natural. He said, it's very good. And again, he's drinking his 7-Up and enjoying his 7-Up. And of course, this is the first soda I had since I went into a temple. So it was very wonderful. So then we get to New York City, Brooklyn, Henry Street Temple. It was 1973, and it's July. Very hot, humid, kind of like this time of year here. Even hotter it was. Prabhupada has a whole apartment right across from the temple room. So we get there and bring everything into Prabhupada's room. Kirti Raj comes up to me, says, does Prabhupada need anything? And for the first time, usually when they would say, does Prabhupada need any? I could never think of anything he needed. He didn't. He was completely happy all the time. I couldn't think of anything. But now, I guess I have my own interest. So when he said, does Prabhupada need anything? I said, oh yeah, you can get 7-Up. And he looked at me, said, 7-Up? I said, yeah, just buy a 6-pack of 7-Up. So then he got a 6-pack of 7-Up. And there was a little fridge in the kitchen, little kitchenette area, and that tiny fridge. So I literally put it in the refrigerator so nobody would see 7-Up was in the refrigerator. But I didn't know what to do, how to approach Prabhupada, see if he wanted one. So then one evening came. Prabhupada's in his sitting room, and he's speaking to one of his temple presidents from a different area, from Florida. And I'm in the kitchen. And this devotee comes out of Prabhupada's room. It's about 8 o'clock at night. And he comes to me. He said, Prabhupada needs water. And he's standing there. He said, give me his glass with water. And I said, no, that's my service. I'm servant. So he went back into the room. So then I had opened the can of 7-Up and I pour it into his goblet. And I have it on the tray. And I'm coming and I come to the door. The door's closed. Prabhupada never had his door closed. He said, we have no secrets, he would say. We have no secrets. Imagine to be on that level, no secrets. But that's what he wanted. So I get to Prabhupada's door, and again, the devotee opens the door and he's trying to grab the tray from me. Now I know I can't just give him the tray, I said, I got it. And he's like, He was older than me, much more advanced. So I go into the room, put it on the table, I offer obeisance, Prabhupada's looking. He says, what is that? I said, oh, it's 7-Up, Prabhupada. He said, oh, okay. And he's sitting there, and he grabs the cup. And this devotee, he can't believe it. Prabhupada's got a 7-Up in his... And he says, very refreshing. And then Prabhupada gets up, and he's standing up, and he grabs the cup, and he just stands there for the next few minutes drinking his 7-Up. And we're just sitting there, and I'm just very, very happy. And then he finished it. So I took it. I said, would you like any more, Prabhupada? He said, no, that's enough. So then I left the room. So then the next morning comes, after class, after breakfast, while we were done the GBC, we were looking for a new temple. It was already, they had outgrown Brooklyn, Henry Street Temple, so they're looking for a new temple. And he said, Prabhupada, I want you to see this place we could possibly buy as a temple. And Prabhupada said, yes, yes. So we went, it was 1970, it was this little Japanese car, very small. Kirti Raj, driver, Srila Prabhupada and I in the back seats. No air conditioning, and it's hot. And he drove into Manhattan. And he pulls across the street from this beautiful cathedral, Catholic cathedral built back in, the 1880s or something. This huge place, church. And he parks across the street from it. And we all get out and we're on the sidewalk. And Prabhupada's ready to go in. And Bhakti said, oh, Prabhupada, no, they don't know. We're devotees, he said, in the process of buying, so we don't. He said, but I wanted you to see it. And Prabhupada could see through the front doors of the church. If you've ever seen churches in America, very big, like this size, even bigger sometimes, all the pews, seats. And Prabhupada could look into there, and he said, we'll call this Gauranga Hall. So Prabhupada was ready. And then that was it. So we're standing on this little street corner, and Prabhupada looks, and there was a corner store. They have in New York, they have all these little grocery stores all over the place. Every few blocks they had back then. So Prabhupada sees, of course he knows New York, he lived there. He knew everything there. He sees the store. And he looks at me. He said, do they have 7:00? I said, yes, Prabhupada. So I said, Kirti Raj. I said, Prabhupada wants a 7-Up. Huh? I said, Prabhupada wants to buy a 7-Up. And we're standing outside. It's like 11 in the morning. Prabhupada in his beautiful saffron, he's got his cane. So he goes in the store. He comes with 1 can of 7-Up. Not 3 cans, 4 cans, 1 can for Prabhupada. We were also trained like that, not to waste money, not even 20 cents. So he comes out with the 1 can, and I take it, I open it up, and I hand it to Prabhupada. And he's standing there on this corner, and he gets the 7-Up in the can, and he's... He drinks about half the can, and then we all get into the car. And Kirti Raj, the driver in the front, Prabhupada and I in the back. And Prabhupada still has the can. And he hands it to me. And as soon as he hands it to me, 4 hands are going into the back seat. We're all fighting for what is ever left of Prabhupada's soda. So we shared it. So that was New York. Then from New York, Prabhupada flew to Los Angeles a few days later. As soon as he got to Los Angeles, he goes into his room. Karandar, was a big GBC devotee in LA. Srila Prabhupada, all the grahastas, they all have 7-Up in their refrigerators. Everyone knew. We didn't need internet. We didn't need anything. We knew, not even by phone, I don't know, but whatever happened, everybody knew within a few hours in ISKCON what's going on, what Prabhupada said, what Prabhupada did. So he's saying they're all drinking 7-Up because they heard Prabhupada had a 7-Up. And Prabhupada said, oh, he said, that's not good. He said, I take little for digestion sometimes. He said, but it's not good that they should do that, he said. But it became a fashion on the plane. Just like when we would take the prasadam sometime. When you were on the plane, 7-Up was okay. In fact, on the plane, when they would come down, Prabhupada would say, all the devotees can have 7-Up. You know, so Prabhupada would treat everybody to a 7-Up on the plane. So we always look forward to getting on the plane just to have a 7-Up. So that was over the years. And the last time was 1977. Now this is September 1977. So Prabhupada's already been lying in the bed, not eating for months. Just his body was literally skin and bones. But that's when he decided to go to England. He was going to go to London and preach. So the plane went from Delhi to Dubai, and then it would go on to London. So on that plane was Abhiram, Guru Kripa was there. I wasn't there at that time. Actually, I was in Vrindavan, but I didn't get to go on that trip to London. When Prabhupada decided to go to London, I remember Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was so upset because no one had proper paperwork, visas or what it was to go. And Prabhupada said, that's okay, Srutakirti's here, he'll come. You should have seen their faces. The idea that I go, and I felt so happy that Prabhupada just said that. So anyway, they take the flight, and the devotees, they all had 4 seats across, but they literally sat on the floor by the door so Prabhupada could lie down. Had his glasses, the dark glasses on. And so then the plane stops in Dubai, and of course it stops, people are getting off, people are getting on. So Guru Kripa, he went over to Srila Prabhupada and had to help him sit up. And Guru Kripa was so, well, everyone, we were horrified what was going on. And Guru Kripa said, and looked at Prabhupada, and he could see, and it's like, you know, jewels coming out of his mouth, and had no strength. And he felt so bad. He looked at Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, can I do anything? Can I get you anything? And Prabhupada smiled. He said, you can get me a 7-Up. You never understand the pure devotee, huh? Prabhupada was already, Abhiram tells some amazing stories in those days about Srila Prabhupada. But anyway, I guess we need to stop here. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.